combatant Agent 6 is summoned by the head of the Kisaragi organization and is debriefed that he will be the organization's spy as they set out to conquer multiple planets that closely resemble Earth. Agent 6 looks at the two baddies trying to order him around, but he complains about why in heaven's name are they sending him to an unknown planet and they talking gibberish. He can't believe that other planets exist with life on them. If that were the case, he would have been ditched this place by now and chilled in one of them with a mommy by his side. He also points out that their ridiculous clothes look like budget cosplays. And this whole universe thing is too much. This infuriates his superiors and they attack him. They remind him that they need to conquer planets. And if they are not conquering planets, combatants like him will be out of business. He angrily yells at his superior that she must take responsibility for modifying his body, talking about he'll be a good house husband and a bunch of other nonsense. But well, let's just say that didn't end well for him. Later, he is led to Lilith, a crazy scientist who has perfected teleportation. She also reveals a lowly version of Android 16 that will accompany him on his mission. They immediately get off the wrong foot, and Alice calls herself a pretty little android. Cap. And aside from the fact that she can self-destruct and take everything out around her if she so desires, which kinda makes him question their sanity and why on earth would they give her that. But he is handed a device that can help him communicate with his world and the organization. Alice calls him a moron and tells him to let her handle the talking. And he's really questioning this dangerous piece of junk. He just needs to go and inspect everything that is on the new planet and establish a base over there. And he cannot fail no matter what. One of them says that she thinks of him as one of the supreme leaders of the organization and he smiles. After all, they have built this world together. He promises his best. As the two of them are hitting off, Agent 6, being the hopeless monkey he is, goes in for a kiss, but he immediately gets the breezy kicked out of him. He is then put in the teleporter, and though he is not too confident about, since the success rate is 100%. But the problem is she never tested it on no one till now, so as she always says, if she tested her experiments they wouldn't be 100% no more. What the Luckily, he's sent into a desert wasteland with Alice by his side. Alice injects him with antibodies to help him fight any disease he gets. Agent 6 is excited because for some reason he thinks no STDs can stop him now. Later they explore the area and Alice wonders how many evil points he has. Realizing that her master is broke as hell, she laughs, calling him a scumbag. And she realizes that he doesn't even trade the points for better equipment but just gets sussy magazines instead. Later a pack of demon dogs attack them and Agent 6 carries Alice and runs off a cliff. He shoots a couple of them with his blicky and tells Alice to do something, but she has the power of a normal little girl, and basically is a useless piece of machine like yourself. One of the demon dogs grapples with him and as he struggles to beat him up, Alice refuses to help him as he calls her a budget-cut washing machine, which she says he can go take his good-for-nothing scum tush and off himself, but he apologizes and she sends a request through his teleporter to send her a shotgun and immediately blows the puppy to pieces. Then a group of knights arrive and a 10x10 baddie leads them, asking what are they doing over here. But her language is not familiar to Agent 6. The chip in his brain translates it seamlessly and Alice takes the reins, coming up with a lie and try to act like a cute little girl that they are warriors from another country who have been exploring and were wiped out and lost everything they had in the forests. And Agent 6 has lost his mind due to the immense loss, stating that, at least with this story, him being an idiot will look like he's just crazy. Snow buys the explanation and volunteers to show her around the city. Later in the city, they notice a beaten-up tank on a pedestal. Snow tells them that it's a relic from the past. Later they meet up with the princess. Snow tells them to bow in front of the princess, but they fail to stick to proper etiquette. The princess lets them know that the demon god has been at war with them and the Sand King turns most of their country into a dust pile. She asks Agent 6 to help her country or else it will be a litter box soon enough. Later Snow leads them away and Alice says that Agent 6 is a very strong warrior and they want to help her. Agent 6 wonders if she is after his macho body and peak masculine strength. Snow angrily yells that there is nothing macho about his body. She is just in for the money and recognition and maybe he is the same way. She will use her position to keep the others from bullying them. They start quarreling, but Alice notices a Rubik's Cube right in the middle of a garden. Snow lets her know that this is a relic that can make it rain when the royal family prays to it, but it hasn't been working for quite a while. Alice examines it and offers to fix the machine. Alice surprises Snow and she wants to take credit for it as well. She runs excitedly to let the royal family know that they will fix it. Alice finally manages to reboot it, but it needs a password before it can reboot. Without thinking anything, Agent 6 yells out that the new password is Woody Festival. They look at him in confusion, but he reveals the reason that he wants to see the princess squirm in embarrassment as she tries to say this vulgar password. But Alice reminds him that maybe the king will say it, and now that got him thinking of a king saying Woody to everyone. The princess arrives and is not too happy with his choice of the password. Later they are brought in front of the king, who decides to banish them, but still forgive them. After all, they did fix the machine, but the princess wants to employ them as her guards. The old balding man is against it. After all, he is the army strategist, but the princess reminds him that they are strong and wise and these values are valuable. The king decides to go with the princess's offer. Snow tries to reason with the princess that they might be spies, but Agent 6 reminds her that she also has a share in the credit, so she is also responsible. Snow freezes as she realizes she has messed up big time. Master Snow is demoted and Agent 6 is now the boss of their group. She is not too happy with it. Alice reminds her that the national treasure is very valuable to the people and the normal penalty would be death. It's because of them that she has been spared, so she should listen closely and know who the master is. Later, Agent 6 realizes that this place is full of old men and young women, so there will be no competition to rizz up baddies. Snow lets them know that it's because most of the young men are out fighting the demons and some of them have lost their lives. On the other hand, she can't believe that Alice is joining the squad. What will an adorable little girl do against the demons? Alice, however, reminds her that she is a strategist and a medic and a high-spec lowly bot at that. Snow hands her a pile of resumes to pick out new members for their squad. She goes through them, but Snow offers to decide who they should recruit. She gathers all the candidates around. Agent 6 wants to hire a man with a name so strong it could strike fear into the heart of his enemies. But Alice lets him know that this man is past his prime and a shadow of his former self. The only thing he will be striking is his dentures into his mouth. She then presents him with two candidates who have taken out more enemies than they can count. She grabs Snow by her hair, showing her who's boss and puts her in place, and tells her to recruit the two. Snow calls out to Rose, who appears, making an entrance so dramatic Megumi would be proud. Like a cosplayer running on caffeine and embarrassment, she declares herself as an artificial combat chimera and asks them if they are man enough to handle her.
What do you mean by that?
Agent 6 matches her freak, replying on the same spectrum of embarrassment that he is Agent 6, a fighting and rizzing machine who has been given modification and surgery and has no real name or a past. In the same dramatic tone, he welcomes the combat chimera and assures her he's man to handle any furry life throws at him. Alice can't believe that these two share the same brain cells. She introduces herself as a normal person, Alice the budget cut washing machine, and she can handle a nut job like her. After all, she is handling Agent 6. In a fit of embarrassment, Rose lets them know that her grandpa, her creator, told her to introduce herself this way. But the poor girl is on the verge of tears. Agent 6 realizes that she can get powers from whatever she eats. And right now, she has the power of a fire-spitting lizard and a one-horned beast. That's why she has a tail and is a borderline furry. The next candidate is a wizard called Grim. She is called out and rolls up in a wheelchair style, saying that she takes power from an undead god to perform miracles.
Cap.
When Agent 6 wonders if he is evil, Grim yells that he will be cursed. She then asks if he has a girlfriend or if she should show him her national treasure. She hikes up her skirt, asking him to ask forgiveness for calling her god an evil one. But without even buying her dinner first, he waned her skirt away, revealing questionable choice of undies.
What do you mean by that?
Grim is on the verge of tears, saying that she was just trying to put on a different. She wasn't going to show him anything, especially her undies. Now he will have to take responsibility by making her a stay-at-home housewife. Everyone looks at Agent 6, wondering if he is the king of scumbags as he calls her Ms. Undies. Snow is not too happy, but Agent 6 is happy. Snow is not too happy with her selection of candidates, but she decides to trust them. Agent 6 reminds her that he is in charge and that he won't be taking orders from someone who has been demoted. Snow is ready to throw hands on this remark, but instead of throwing hands, Agent 6 puts his hands on her massive melons, earning evil points again. Snow is about to cry and angrily swings her sword left and right. As Agent 6's second sword is threatening to rip through his sheath from all the excitement, the princess looks at them and wonders what's going on. Snow comes to her senses and turns to leave. The princess reveals that Snow is an orphaned little girl who has been working in her position from day one. This surprises him as he always thought of her as a rich daddy's girl. Later they are shown their room. Agent 6 wants to make a name for himself and get a hideout as a reward, but Alice reminds him of his main mission. Later they see a group of demons marching head-on. She also notices the humans marching on in a straight line to the demon camp. Agent 6 comes up with a brilliant and cowardly idea to burn the supply unit that will weaken the demons. Snow is against it as it's not very knight-like, but Alice tells her that no matter how strong the enemy is, they can't live on air. Grim excitedly flicks her tail as she wants to become the ultimate chimera by eating a lot of tasty demons.
What?
Later they come across the supply chain and burn it. He then tells Rose to take any monster meat she wants and they will make the demon lord fear them. She creates a breath of fire, burning everything, and starts eating the burnt demons as well. It's all-you-can-eat disgusting buffet. A demon baddie arrives riding on a griffin. She immediately notices Agent 6 and wonders if he is the leader. Agent 6 on the other hand can't believe what a baddie she is, with an hourglass figure in clothes that cover nothing and reveal everything. He takes multiple pictures with his camera and she wonders what is he doing. She is one of the Demon Lord's Elite Four and for some odd reason is interested in him. She offers him a position in the Demon Lord's army with his own harem of beauties, where he will be laying the whatever he desires left and right. This is enough to convince him to join the Demon Lord's army, but Alice smacks some sense into him. The Elite Four fires a bolt of flames, but he dodges it and goes in for the elimination using his dagger. But the griffin blocks his path, but Alice takes care of the griffin with her shotgun, though the recoil is too much for her body and she's pounded into the mountain. Grim also wakes up. Another demon arrives who is an Elite Four of the Earth. He analyzes Grim, effortlessly breaking her wheelchair and unaliving her. This infuriates Agent 6. However, before he can avenge his beloved Ms. Undies, the Demon Elite is summoned back to the castle for something urgent. Later, Snow reveals that Grim can't die because she is one of the undead. All that drama for nothing. She is loaded into a cart, and later they take her to a temple. Everyone turns to leave, but Agent 6 stands by her side and she is brought back to life. She explains that he shouldn't be waiting for her, but he tells her that he didn't want her to be alone while she was resurrected. This touches her deeply and she offers to go on a date with him. And their date was basically being D1 haters, as they had fun breaking up other couples by ramming their wheelchairs through. They also come across a guard and Grim curses her with a headache. Whatever curse she uses, if it doesn't succeed, it bounces back on her. Agent 6 wonders if this is why she can't walk, but in reality, a curse stops her from wearing shoes. Back at the castle, everyone is having a meeting that the Demon Lord's army is pushing them, but all of a sudden they have retreated. Agent 6 reveals that he is the reason why they have retreated, but the army strategist is not too happy with him. Agent 6 reveals that no matter how strong the enemy is, they can't live without their supply chain. They then tell the strategist that his army is filled with morons. Later, the strategist bows to him, calling him grandfather. The king now issues the order they must wait for the Chosen One. The princess reveals that the Chosen One is someone who is destined to defeat the hero's army, and he has a mark on his hand. Agent 6 mistakes himself as the Chosen One and takes off his glove, revealing a bruise on the back of his hand. He smirks in his delusions, saying he's the Chosen One destined to bring victory. But the princess bursts his bubble and reveals that in reality that's just a bite mark from a deadly insect. However, surprisingly, he is still alive, thanks to the medicine Alice had injected earlier. Still, he wants to be the Chosen One so bad, but the princess lets him know that her brother is the Chosen One. And with that, he is destined to remain the friend-zoned one. Later, he meets up with Rose, who is running away from Alice, who is trying to feed her a grasshopper, because grasshoppers are mad strong and if she eats it, she will get stronger. But Rose doesn't want to eat an insect. That is low even for her. Alice tells her that her reward will be silicon to pump up those tomatoes up to watermelons. But Rose is happy the way she is. Later, he wonders why is she trying so hard to fight for the humans. She explains that she wants to know who she is and find herself. Her grandfather was a man searching for the Philosopher's Stone but died after trying out forbidden magic. It was forbidden for a reason. Now he is trying to seek out angelic baddies in the afterlife and she is stuck trying to retrieve his research. Agent 6 on the other hand decides that she is an innocent and powerful little girl. Both members of the organization decide that she is perfect to be brainwashed into being a combatant. and now she will be an apprentice agent. She fits the criteria with no family, no past, and no ties. Grim, on the other hand, is busy having a naughty dream, but the sun starts to set. Agent 6 can't believe that even though he has been here for a while, he hasn't gotten lucky with any baddie. He starts yelling that he wants to bump into a baddie and perhaps grab a pair accidentally, and he tries his luck every day by waiting behind a wall. Alice guides his hand to touch her non-existent tomatoes, but this angers Agent 6 instead because he doesn't believe that the world should be against him. Later, the king summons them, explaining that all of the demons are in a tower and 2 of the demons have the highest rank, Rista of Knowledge and Gil of Power. But if the war drags on, they will destroy them before the Chosen One gets to the Demon Lord. And this tower holds the treasure that the Chosen One needs to destroy the Demon Lord. So they must attack the tower while the Chosen One rests and regains his energy. The strategist is not too happy, wondering what can the regular humans do if the Chosen One fails to defeat those on top of the tower. With no good strategies at hand, he tries to divert attention to Agent 6, saying that he is supposed to be a smarty pants. He should come up with a solution. Agent 6, being the despicable loser he is, comes up with a solution. They should enter the first floor, burn a fire there, and smoke out all the demons. In other words, forget playing by the rules and set fire. But no one is willing to go with the idea, as it is not what a holy knight would do. Later, the human forces gather around and engage with the demons. But Agent 6 and his crew are chilling a few feet away. Snow wants to seize victory and make a name for herself. But Agent 6 has no plans to enter the battle in a head-on fight. Snow charges away angrily, ready to duke it out and make a name for herself. Rose wonders if they should follow her, but he tells her she'll be back after she tires herself out. As evening falls, sure enough, Snow arrives, exhausted from the continuous battle. Dream, on the other hand, is once again having naughty dreams about Snow. Snow violently shakes her awake. Agent 6 asks Alice if it will work, and she says that it will. He hands him a mailing gun, and he takes off his heavy armor and starts punching nails into the side of the tower. They wonder what is all this about. He comes up with a brilliant plan that they will punch nails into the wall and use them to climb to the top from the outside. The demons won't suspect a thing. Grim, on the other hand, is not too happy that Agent 6 is not climbing behind her when she has something special planned under her skirt.
What do you mean by that?
But sure enough, Snow is fatigued from her battle with the demons earlier. She is running out of strength and is about to fall off, but Agent 6 grabs her at the last moment, pulls her up, and decides to give her a piggyback ride. But instead of it being hard, Agent 6 enjoys it with 2 squished marshmallows pressing against his back. Snow yells that he's a V-card gatekeeping loser. They're almost at the top, and a goat-headed demon and a bull-headed demon are enjoying their time together. Agent 6 looks at them chilling, and when you think his dignity couldn't get any lower, he straight up dropkicks the goat demon down the flight of stairs, and tells the bull demon not to move a muscle, or else they will fry the goat demon into lamb kebabs. And at this point, they questioning who's really the demon here. Bull Boy is conflicted to protect his brother but is beaten up instead. As Goat Boy arrives, he looks at Bull Boy beaten and defeated. Goat Boy yells, what beef do they have with them? But Agent 6 tells him to stop and listen. He's willing to sell his brother back. After all, he's alive, but barely. With no other choice, the goat demon accepts the offer. Later, Snow arrives in his room, and she hands him a pouch full of gold coins. He can't believe how much money he has. This is enough to live a life of luxury for a year. Agent 6 angrily yells that he wants to live in this world, and he doesn't want to work for the organization anymore, which pays him peanuts compared to what he's worth here.
No. He's got a point.
And no one shows him gratitude over there. Alice angrily tells him to stop changing sides. Alice is also handed a smaller pouch of gold, and happily smiles that this is the first time she's received anything except for her shotgun. The organization reviewed their report and can't believe that he received the equivalent of 7 million yen for his services, while they paid him 18,000 yen. They decide that they will give him some meat as a gift later on. The king calls 6 and Snow to his office where he sat alongside his ever-smiling strategist. He, slumping into his throne, ordered 6, muttering how it was technically his day off and how annoying it was to deal with matters like these when he had planned to nap. Snow immediately nudged 6 to behave properly in front of royalty, but 6 just rolled his eyes, muttering something about never catching a break. The king explained the situation, how a new path had opened from the demon continent, and now it was easier than ever for demon elites to slip into their country. With that, he requested, or rather ordered, that Six and his team take the initiative and engage the 4 elites from the opposing side. Six tried to reject the idea on instinct, his mouth already forming the syllables of protest, but Snow leaned in and whispered there was a hefty bonus and extra money involved if they succeeded. And of course, that got this loser's attention. Still skeptical about the strategist, he asks if this grand idea was the brainchild of the strategist. The man simply smiled, falsely as always, and praised Six for being sharp as ever, a comment that only raised more alarms in Six's mind. The next day, out on the field, Six surveyed the battlefield with a tired look. Beside him, Alice looked through a telescope, observing the movement of enemy troops and offering insights. She told him it was perfectly valid to be wary of the strategist. His intentions never seemed fully transparent. Behind them, their own troops stood tall, ready for battle, though no one could truly claim to be fully prepared for what was coming. Snow and Rose were busy trying to wake Grim up, who, as usual, had dozed off under the shade of a tree. Snow, in her impatience, accidentally knocked her out instead of waking her up. Grim slumped over more dramatically than before. Six turned around and told them, a bit too casually, that they didn't actually have to fight today. He confessed he didn't trust the strategist. The man looked like the type who'd rather preserve his own neck and benefit himself than protect the people. Snow immediately called him a coward. Just then, enemy troops began forming lines across the battlefield. Among them was Hyena, one of the 4 demon elites, followed closely by a massive rock golem. Six's eyes widened as he asked about it. Snow explained it was a magic-powered golem, a beast that could only move through direct magical input. The fight began quickly. Snow, looking like she definitely just did something, was a bit too eager to test her new Glacian blade that she'd bought on loan. Rose, on the other hand, who was looking oddly suspicious, declared she had always wanted to bite a griffin and dashed off without commands. Six looked at Alice and told her to try and wake Grim so she could cast a spell to disable the golem, but Grim remained blissfully unconscious. With no time left to waste, Six charged at the golem alone. His troops had already split off, dealing with ogres and goblins in different parts of the field. Six threw a punch at the golem's rocky body, only to injure his own hand due to his lack of common sense. Wincing, he told Alice to contact HQ for weapon support. Alice responded that it would take some time. After all, it was tea time at the company back on Earth. Six sighed, then reached for one of the safety items with a 3-minute recovery window. He activated it just in time to dodge a crushing blow from the golem. With a burst of energy, he finally managed to bring the creature down. Rose returned from her battle, wiping griffin feathers off her armor. The loud noise from the golem's fall finally woke Grim up. Six pointed at her, accusing her of sleeping during the most critical moment. As the smoke cleared, Hyena stepped forward again. She complained that none of the fighters she'd faced were entertaining and asked for a real challenge. Snow returned limping, swordless. She cried out that Hyena's flames had melted her weapon and begged Six to take revenge. Six told everyone to stop shaking him. His safety item was still in effect, and he couldn't move for 3 minutes. Grim, ever the savior when convenient, cast a freezing spell on Hyena, immobilizing her long enough for Six to take his 3 minutes off. Hyena, impressed or simply amused, offered Six a deal. She said if he joined them, she'd pay him 4 times more than what his current country was offering. Six, visibly tempted, took a step toward her. Snow panicked, trying to interject, but before she could, a crystal fell from Hyena's belt. Grim's eyes widened. It was a magicite, a powerful stone that explained Hyena's strength as one of the elites. Six grinned. He offered to return the magicite, but only if Hyena would pose for one of his weird fantasy photos. To everyone's horror or amusement, Hyena agreed. Six took the photo but did not return the crystal anyway. Hyena, now annoyed, commanded her troops to retreat, and just like that, the battle ended in victory. Later that night, the team celebrated at the local bar. The girls from his unit surrounded Six, showering him with praise. Even Snow, who rarely said anything nice, praised him, and that surprised nearly everyone. But when Rose asked if Snow would now acknowledge Six as their commander, she refused instantly. Six smirked, announcing that this was how Tsundirs acted, and deep inside, Snow was clearly in love with him. When the party ended and the drinks took their toll, Snow was the one who brought the fully drunk Six back to his quarters. Alice received him with a tired expression, but Six drunkenly looked up at Snow and slurred, asking for a goodnight kiss. Snow blushed furiously, shouting out that she hated Six when he acted like this. Her voice echoed down the corridor, loud, raw, embarrassed. Unfortunately, someone heard it. The strategist, who had just turned the corner, saw her and pulled her aside. He smiled, voice low and persuasive. He offered her a large amount of gold and a powerful position in exchange for one small task: frame Six as a spy. He told her he understood how frustrating it must be to serve under someone like Six when she, a trained royal guard, was meant for far more. The deal sounded simple: fake some evidence, lie a little, and enjoy the rewards. Snow remained quiet, listening carefully. She remembered how Six once said he didn't trust the strategist and how he looked like a man who always acted for his own gain. Something about that echoed in her now. But with everything laid out before her, she gave a slow nod. She would consider it. Later, as she approached Six's room to tell him everything, she hesitated at the door when she heard his voice inside. Her hand froze mid-knock. Inside, Six was talking to himself, more sober than before. He was saying how everyone in his troop seemed to be in love with him, and how tempting it was to give in. But then he said he had to prioritize his duty over desire. That one day, he would become strong enough to fulfill his mission, because he was their company's spy in this foreign country. Just then, the door creaked open. Snow stood at the entrance, eyes wide, her voice barely a whisper as she asked what did he just say. Snow asks what he meant by being a spy. Six tells her not to eavesdrop on people like that and questions why she didn't knock before coming in. She tells him that, on behalf of her country, she has every right to demand they leave immediately. The following week, Snow officially becomes a commander, with Rose and Grim working under her. She focuses entirely on training her troops and making sure they are fully prepared for the war that looms ahead. She organizes drills, reviews formation strategies, and tirelessly ensures their combat readiness increases each day. On the other side, Six finds himself settling into a hotel with Alice. Their plan is to spend 1 month installing the teleportation cell, and once it's ready, they'll call the company for an invasion. Everything is going according to their corporate plan. Alice notices that Six's expression has been more downcast than usual and looks at him, asking if he regrets what they are doing. He refuses instantly, brushing off the idea by stating he works for the largest, most evil corporation in the universe. Regret is a luxury he doesn't afford himself. Alice shares her research with him, revealing that, according to her findings, the Demon Lord and its forces are likely to invade the Kingdom of Grace, and realistically, the kingdom stands no chance of winning. The war will be completely one-sided, and it's only a matter of time. Six grows visibly frustrated by this information and orders Alice to prepare for war, saying they are going to help the kingdom, if only to gain more evil points. Their corporate mission requires them to collect enough of these evil points to trade in for weapons, items, and other support from headquarters. Later that night, Six attempts to accumulate these points by harassing girls and scaring them off. His actions are crude, designed solely to trigger the evil point system. But he gets caught in the act by Snow, who demands answers from him. Snow tells him that, in her country, the punishment for being a spy is execution. She doesn't carry it out, though. Instead, she simply orders him to leave and not show his face again. Shortly after, Rose shows up, asking why Six left the military. Six is surprised and asks if Snow never told anyone the real reason. He then jokingly accuses Snow of having a crush on him and claims that she sexually harassed him, which is why he quit. He returns home that night and shows Alice how many evil points he's managed to earn. She tells him to save at least 200 points for their trump card, and that they can use the rest to lay mines on the battlefield, preparing for the upcoming chaos. By the next morning, news spreads like wildfire across the kingdom. Everyone now knows him as Zipperman, the pervert who harasses women. His reputation takes a nosedive, and when he arrives back home, even Alice greets him mockingly with the same nickname. He doesn't get to rest, as he's soon pulled into more developments. While walking through the streets, he notices that the mood across the country has shifted into something darker. He asks around and finds out that one of the Elite Four has kidnapped the Chosen One, the prophesied hero who was meant to fight the Demon Lord. Alice and Six sit down to discuss what happened. They piece together that Six's involvement may have disrupted the original pattern of events. The Chosen One was supposed to mature and reach his peak before the final confrontation. But because Six interfered, he was taken too early. With the timeline shattered and no hero left to stand against the Demon Lord, the two agree they are now in a hopeless situation. Their only option is to run. Just as they prepare to leave, Tilly's knocks on their door. She shows them a forgotten parachute, confirming her suspicion that Six is a spy. He panics and begs her to let them stay. To his surprise, Tilly's doesn't lash out. Instead, she asks him a favor. She requests that he stay just one more night, long enough to witness how brave the soldiers of her kingdom truly are. She wants him to remember their courage and carry their story back with him. Touched by her sincerity, Six becomes somber and agrees to stay. Soon after, the demon army begins its march toward the country. Meanwhile, Grace's troops assemble at the border, standing firm and waiting. On the battlefield, Hind faces another monster and tells it that she fears Six even more than the Chosen One. But before she can even act, the golems around her begin to collapse. Confused and alert, she drops to the ground and finds her magicite scattered. It doesn't take her long to suspect a trap. She starts to think that perhaps Six is hiding nearby. What she doesn't know is that Six and Alice are, indeed, behind the ambush. They had placed the magicite there to lure Hein in, planning a massive explosion designed to cripple the demon forces. Back at the castle, Tilly's watches from a window, her face full of worry. She wonders why the demon army is late and turns away to ask Six and Alice, who are standing nearby and oddly calm. They are discussing old legends about unicorns, joking about how they only let virgin girls ride them, and how the mythology around them makes them almost seem like gatekeepers of innocence. They are still caught in this ridiculous conversation when Tilly's interrupts, asking them seriously about the enemy. Alice casually mentions that maybe the army got delayed due to the landmines and that there might not even be a battle anymore. However, moments later, their assumption is shattered by loud booming noises that echo through the air. The ground trembles, and the sound continues growing louder. Six looks into the distance and sees a battered and severely injured Hein approaching in a damaged golem. She's dragging herself forward, clearly injured but burning with rage and determination. The fight is far from over. Six's previous smugness fades as the realization hits him. This battle was never going to be easy. Even with their clever traps and manipulation of events, the strength of the Demon Lord's army is not to be underestimated. The consequences of interfering with prophecies and shifting timelines have now caught up to them. The war that loomed ahead is no longer something distant, it is here and it is happening. Hein's resilience reminds everyone that the Demon Lord's forces are not easily taken down, and while their plan may have slowed them, it did not stop them. The power of the minds, the manipulation, the lies, none of it seems to be enough. Six clenches his fists, now more serious than before. The time for jokes is over. Their final battle is arriving whether they're ready or not. Alice, standing beside him, also understands this. The evil points they had been gathering, the traps they set, the information they twisted, all of it is just a drop in the ocean when faced with raw power and destiny. Tilly's continues to stare at Hein's figure in the distance, both fear and awe mixed in her eyes. The kingdom she vowed to protect is now at the edge of destruction, and her only hope is that those around her, no matter how chaotic, will fight back with everything they have. Snow watches the approaching demon army in the distance, her expression cold but tense. She orders Grim to cast a curse on the enemy golems. Grim looks at her with a crooked smile, the kind of grin that gives chills to even her allies. She tells Snow that she had already asked the entire nation to lend her their gold, all of it, so that she could sacrifice it in one go to her god. Without hesitation, she begins her ritual, raising her staff high into the darkening sky. An eerie light surrounds her as the spell activates. The golems marching toward them suddenly freeze in place, their massive feet refusing to take another step forward. Grim attempts to push her curse further, aiming it at Hein herself. But the curse doesn't take. She narrows her eyes in frustration as Hein resists its influence completely. Just then, the battle's intensity spikes, and Rose moves in to engage the Gladlander. She lunges, teeth bared, trying to bite him directly. The Gladlander smirks, mocking her by saying that since she's half demon, she will never be able to stand a chance against someone like him. But Rose bites back, not physically this time, telling him that her grandfather once told her that real strength is standing beside friends even when things get hard. As the battle shifts, both Rose and Grim position themselves in front of Snow. They glance at each other before telling her to retreat back to the castle. The situation has escalated beyond what they can handle, and they're determined to hold the demons off as long as they can. Snow hesitates. Her fists clench as she stares at the chaos before her, but eventually her legs move. She turns around, face full of conflicting emotions, and runs back toward the castle. Tears gather at the corners of her eyes, not from fear, but from the bitter feeling of leaving her friends behind. Inside the castle, Six is already trying to move things into motion. He holds Tilly's by the shoulders and tells her that as long as she is alive, their kingdom still has a chance. He starts preparing for an escape, mentally going over every backup plan he had thought of. But just as he begins to move, Snow comes crashing into the hall, breathless, demanding they stop. She pleads with them, shouting that Rose and Grim are out there, risking everything, and that she is not worth losing their lives over. They have to help them. Alice tries to stop Six, warning him not to throw away their only shot at survival, but Six listens to Snow. With a determined face, he nods and turns back, preparing to leave the safety of the castle to rescue the girls. Alice sighs, taunting him bitterly. She tells him that he's terrible at being evil, and that's the reason he's not getting promoted. It's not about failure, it's about intent. He lacks the heart to be wicked. They make their way to the balcony. Six turns to Alice, asking her to requisition a tank for the upcoming counterattack. Alice, who's had enough of his midnight evil point farming antics, scolds him. She tells him that he wasted all their evil points on petty, sleazy activities during the night. Still, she understands the situation and agrees, telling him that desperate times call for desperate measures. She instructs him to punch the king to get a bulk of evil points back at once. Before Six can do anything, Snow steps in again. She tells him not to punch Tilly's but to hit her instead. She stands there, eyes narrowed and fists ready. Six, taken off guard, tells her that what he's about to do might be something she wouldn't approve of. Snow, completely serious, tells him to kiss her instead. Six, thinking that a kiss would be consensual and not evil enough, suddenly grabs the waistband of her underwear and yanks her panties down in front of everyone. Evil points flood in rapidly as Snow screams in rage. Fueled by his newly accumulated evil points, Six storms onto the battlefield, commandeering the tank. He begins to take down the golems one by one. Each shot lands with mechanical precision and overwhelming force. Snow, now chasing after him in fury, keeps shouting insults, not out of hate but out of sheer embarrassment and frustration. Soon, the Elite Four, alongside the remnants of the demon army, make their entrance. They gather at the castle gates, ready to break through. Snow, regaining her composure, orders Six to take care of the Elite Four while she deals with the remaining soldiers and lower-level demons. Six, cracking his knuckles and already dripping with chaos energy, asks for the R-Buzz chainsaw. He uses all his remaining evil points, sending his balance into the negatives, and fuses his equipment with the safety features, turning the combined item into a weapon of terrifying destruction. The moment he activates it, the battlefield turns into a slaughterhouse. Six tears through the demon ranks, spinning and slashing without hesitation. The monsters scream as he shreds everything in his path. Even his allies begin to take a few steps back, disturbed by the sheer intensity of his rampage. The blood and oil splash in every direction, and for the first time, Six isn't joking or smiling, he's focused and terrifying. Hein finally makes her way toward him, bleeding and tired. Six, without dropping his weapon, asks her for a 1-month truce. She stares at him, battle-worn but thinking. She finally agrees, signaling a temporary ceasefire. The war, at least for now, is over. Later, after the smoke has settled and the ruins have cooled, Tilly stands before the remaining soldiers, addressing them from the castle steps. Her voice is solemn but hopeful. She acknowledges the sacrifices made and the bravery displayed. She pauses mid-speech to call out to Six directly, asking him to officially join the military, not as a rogue agent, but as their commander. She says he's already earned it. Snow, standing nearby, nods in agreement. She echoes the request, though she doesn't say it with words. Her eyes carry everything she wants to say.
Sentouin, いかがですか?
Alice, watching from behind, crosses her arms. She reminds Six that he still needs to get his evil points back into the positive if he wants to return home. Until then, punishment from headquarters awaits. Six smirks, the first real smile he's worn in a while, and turns to her. He thanks her, not sarcastically, not playfully, but genuinely. He tells her that she's his partner through all of it, no matter how many evil points they gain or lose. The sun rises the next morning, faint and struggling through the smoke of battle. Grace's kingdom has survived another day, but what lies ahead is still uncertain. Six knows they'll be tested again. The demon lord still lurks, and new enemies will rise. But for now, they've won, and that's enough. Six yelled at Astora through the computer screen, slamming his hand on the desk out of frustration. He scolded her loudly for her delay, his voice echoing through the static of the transmission. She winced a little at the volume but didn't seem too surprised. To calm him down, she tried bribing him with the new edition of his favorite novel, waving the hardcover teasingly in front of the camera. But Six wasn't in the mood to be pacified so easily. He told her flatly that if she really wanted to apologize, she should marry him and let him become her house husband, permanently retiring from battle and responsibilities. Astoreth paused, not sure whether to laugh or be worried. She quickly apologized again, specifically for the broken teleportation device. Six sighed, telling her that Alice had already told him everything, and he wasn't happy with the mess. Astoreth nodded, then shifted the topic, telling Six that the company was currently invading another planet, and that his presence was also needed there. Before she could even finish the sentence, Six cut her off, firmly refusing. He said he had far more important matters on this planet, urgent, personal, and chaotic enough to occupy all of his time. Later in the day, he found himself caught up in a sparring match with the Tiger Man. Instead of using conventional weapons, Six, who always insisted on bringing a sword to a gunfight just for dramatic effect, had brought along Snow's sword without asking. It seemed like a clever idea until he made one overly dramatic swing. With a clang and a crack, the sword snapped clean in half. Six froze. Tiger Man also paused, unsure whether to be impressed or horrified. Just then, Snow appeared behind him, arms crossed and an expectant look on her face. She asked calmly for her sword, holding out her hand. Six turned slowly, trying to come up with something believable. He stammered about how the sword had gone on a journey of self-discovery and had come back, spiritually stronger but physically broken. Snow stared at him blankly for a moment, then burst into tears, clutching the broken pieces of her precious sword. Six sighed and offered no further explanation, realizing he had failed spectacularly at softening the blow. But surprisingly, Tiger Man stepped forward. Without saying much, he presented his own sword to Snow. She sniffled, taking the weapon with both hands, a small smile finally breaking through her crying face. She thanked him sincerely, moved by the gesture, but Tiger Man didn't let go. When she casually called him a demon, his eyes narrowed, and he told her that if she was going to call him that, then the sword wasn't hers yet. Snow chuckled nervously and adjusted her words. After another enemy invasion that left the group battered but victorious, they all decided to relax at the local bar. Snow sat back in her seat, gently caressing the new sword on her lap. It wasn't her original one, but it would do for now. The bar was filled with chatter, laughter, and clinking glasses. Everyone was trying to unwind, some of them louder than others. The conversations drifted from tactics to bizarre local food, but eventually landed on a familiar argument: science versus magic. Alice brought it up first, her usual proud tone in place. She boasted how their home planet valued science, logic, and empirical knowledge over anything that couldn't be measured. That was how progress worked. Grim, who had already downed a few drinks, raised an eyebrow and entered the conversation. He told her that faith and magic had just as much power, and maybe even more. He offered to prove that his god existed, and that magic was undeniably real. Alice rolled her eyes, challenging him outright to summon a demon then and there. Grim, either brave or reckless, accepted the challenge. He performed a quick ritual, whispering incantations and drawing glowing symbols with the salt from the bar table. To everyone's surprise, something actually happened. A summoning circle opened up, and from within, an ancient devil appeared, complete with horns, cloaks, and flaming eyes. The bar went silent. The devil, rather elegantly, offered to grant them a single wish. Alice was unimpressed. She stepped forward, arms crossed, and asked for 2 more planets. The demon blinked, clearly caught off guard by such a large and oddly specific request. She clarified again, saying that if he was truly powerful, adding 2 more planets to their solar system shouldn't be a problem. The demon fumbled for words, nervously explaining that people usually asked for wealth, love, food, normal things. Alice narrowed her eyes, growing more suspicious. She leaned forward and told the demon that if he really wanted to help, then he should unclog their bathroom because clearly that was the only thing he might be capable of doing. The demon's jaw dropped. His flames dimmed slightly. He protested, insisting that he was ancient and powerful, but Alice wasn't buying any of it. She circled around him slowly, poking at his cloak and calling him a cheap hologram. Even with the other people in the bar wide-eyed in disbelief, Alice stuck to her argument. She said it was more likely that someone was projecting a high-quality illusion than that magic was real. She even accused Grim of rigging the whole thing with hidden projectors. The demon, now visibly offended, vanished with a puff of smoke and a lot of sulking. The rest of the group chuckled awkwardly and moved on from the incident. The drinks kept coming, and the music played on, but Alice stayed firm in her scientific stance. Tilly sits alone in the palace garden, the breeze warm against her face as she reflects on the vanished water artifact once the lifeblood of their kingdom. Since her father disappeared without completing the sacred water prayer, the flow stopped, and even the magical water stones began to fade. Lost in thought, she's startled by Six, who teases her lightly. Blushing, she admits her growing concern. The artifact is essential, and with no leads on her father, she plans to act. She'll send Snow to the kingdom of Turis with a diplomatic escort, hoping to buy time, while she searches for the king herself. But Turis is not known for its hospitality. The prince of that kingdom, Engel, is infamous for his erratic behavior and strange obsession with beautiful women. Tilly's, knowing the risk, asks Six if he'll escort Snow and the others personally to keep them safe. Six, despite his usual sarcasm, nods in agreement. When they depart, Snow takes the front seat of their magical vehicle, letting the wind tousle her white blonde hair. She closes her eyes, feeling free, calling herself the wind. In the back seat, Grim watches the desert roll past with awe. But their joy doesn't last long. From the distance, a group of deadly hags, mythical beasts that roam the sands, begin charging toward them, their screeches echoing in the dry air. Snow grips the steering controls tighter and tells everyone to hold on. She speeds up, cutting through the sand like a blade. Just then, Grim falls from her seat due to the turbulence, tumbling dangerously close to the edge of the open vehicle. Panic erupts as everyone scrambles to pull her back in. barely saving her from being devoured by the charging Hegs. Their breath is short and their nerves rattled, but they manage to escape the threat and finally arrive at the gates of Torrid. They are greeted by palace staff, who offer formal but hollow smiles. The staff announces that Prince Engel welcomes them on behalf of the royal family of Turis. Snow, already suspicious of the place, makes it clear that they brought plenty of water stones to negotiate with. She emphasizes this again when speaking to the prince's manager, ensuring that the resources are not mishandled. As the sun sets and the strange warmth of the desert night takes hold, Grim prepares for her mission. Knowing they must attract the prince's attention, she wears an outfit far more revealing than she's used to. She looks at Six with nervous eyes and asks how she looks. Six, true to form, makes a smart remark, calling her healed as though she had been bedridden for months. Grim, annoyed, throws a few curses his way, but Six ducks with a smug grin. Just then, Snow and the other girls enter the room, ready for the evening's banquet. Grim tries to create a seductive atmosphere, encouraging the palace chefs and servants to chant her name, which they hesitantly do. Her antics catch the attention of some attendees, but they're quickly overshadowed when Prince Engel makes his grand appearance. Tall, wide-shouldered, and dressed in ornate red robes, he enters with the poise of someone used to admiration. Snow's eyes flash with ambition. She sees this moment as her opportunity. If she can win over the prince, she believes she could marry into royalty, become queen, and finally have everything she ever wanted. She walks straight up to him and, with carefully rehearsed grace, takes his hand. She compliments him on his physique, her voice dripping with practiced awe. Meanwhile, Six leans over to his partner and mutters how ridiculous this is, pointing out how Engel is neither handsome nor particularly charismatic. But Snow insists that the prince is beautiful and that he must have been misunderstood all his life. Engel, having been lied to all his life about his appearance and worth, is at first suspicious of Snow's intentions. But as she gently holds his face, her eyes glimmer with a strange, pure sincerity. Her words seem genuine, and for a moment, Engel believes her. Yet his instincts remain guarded. Realizing she is a foreign envoy and possibly trying to manipulate him, he changes the subject to water stones, brushing off her advances. Snow's face falls. She had imagined herself as queen, surrounded by luxury, commanding an army. But Engel's disinterest shatters her illusions. Frustrated, she watches as her dreams slip from her fingers. With the prince distracted, Six and his partner decide to explore the palace. They sneak through the back corridors, eventually finding themselves in a hidden underground basement. The space is dimly lit, but a strange yellow fluid fills a large tub attached to the wall and floor. It bubbles faintly, casting an eerie glow across the chamber. Six squints and mutters that it looks like a nasty experiment, maybe cloning. Or worse, whatever it is, it seems alive. Suddenly, a voice calls out behind them. A girl in a flowing blue dress appears, her hair the same color as a clear lake. She warns them not to touch the equipment. Six narrows his eyes and asks who she is. The girl introduces herself simply, but then recognizes him. She mentions that her leader once lost to him. Six is confused until his partner reminds him it's Gadalkand, the demon lord he killed on a previous mission. Realizing who they're dealing with, the blue-haired girl scoffs, calling them fools. She introduces herself as Russell, one of the 4 agents of Elemental Command. She is the Russell of Water, and her loyalty is to the demons now. Before she can retaliate, Six grabs her face and uses her as a shield. Just then, another familiar figure appears behind, a cold and calculating woman from their past missions. He holds Russell in place, forcing her to freeze. Six orders his partner to bring the handcuffs, and they successfully subdue both Russell and Hein. The team begins interrogating and torturing them for answers, gaining valuable evil points in the process. After gathering information, Six storms into the ballroom, kicking open the royal doors, and demands an audience with Prince Engel. He accuses the prince of treason of secretly selling water stones to the demons. The prince, calm but resigned, admits it. He had no choice. The Sand King, a powerful desert demon, had invaded, and their kingdom was already under his control. Engel had been cooperating to delay further bloodshed. Snow's fury boils over. She accuses the demons of hating humanity and calls the prince a coward. The situation explodes as Snow and Hein begin to fight not with weapons, but with words and persuasion. Each tries to sway the prince to her side. Snow, still desperate for power and recognition, pleads with Engel to choose her. Hein, equally ambitious, tries to manipulate him with her own brand of charm. But the prince, disillusioned and drained, loses all interest in both of them. They had become distractions, not allies. Amid the chaos, Six's inappropriate antics get them all thrown out of the castle, followed by a royal notice banning them from Turis. Defeated, they return to Tilly's, only to hear worse Turis has declared war. The fallout is swift. Snow is stripped of her knighthood, sobbing over her lost promotion. But Tilly's, burdened by looming conflict, has no time for comfort. She gathers her remaining messengers and assigns a new mission. If they can't rely on diplomacy, they'll take action. The only way to restore water to their land now is to retrieve the sacred stone from the Sand King himself. She selects Six, Alice, and Grim for the mission. Knowing the demon sleeps during the night, they plan to infiltrate his lair under the cover of darkness. As the stars rise over the desert, the three operatives prepare to enter enemy territory. They have no backup, no royal support, and no second chances. But what they do have is resolve, and that might just be enough. The journey toward the Sand King begins, not with fanfare, but with the silence of the night and the weight of a kingdom's hope resting on their shoulders. Later that same night, under a sliver of moonlight, the desert winds swirled violently as Six, Alice, Snow, and Grim finally arrived at the location of the Sand King. To their surprise, the map had led them deep into a pocket of dense forest in the middle of the burning desert. Towering trees, gnarled and ancient, grew out of the cracked earth, their roots digging into sand where no roots should have survived. The scene felt impossible, trees of such magnitude thriving in the most hostile terrain on the continent. It was both a mystery and a trap. Their mission was simple: retrieve the enchanted seeds needed to restore the water artifact. After securing them, the group began their escape, but a sudden quake split the desert open. The Sand King erupted from below, forcing Snow to shout for an emergency evacuation. With no time to spare, they were forced to abandon the jeep and the precious water stones to save themselves. Without hesitation, they leapt from the vehicle just before it was swallowed into the shifting sands. The water stones, their only leverage in the diplomatic game with Turis, were gone. As the vehicle sank, the Sand King's monstrous silhouette faded into the desert's core once more. The team barely escaped, rolling across dunes and coughing sand from their lungs. They gathered themselves at the edge of a cliff that overlooked the vast expanse of the desert. For the first time, the weight of their failure set in. Without the jeep, without the stones, and without a working plan, they were stranded in a desert with no way back to grace. And this was only the first day. They looked at one another with dust-caked faces and eyes full of doubt. Not only had they failed their mission, but they now had no evil points remaining, the very currency that allowed them to summon aid or tools from their guild. The second day arrived with scorching sun and no shelter. At nightfall, Alice sat alone, trying to remember anything useful. A flicker of an old idea returned to her. She rushed to Six and reminded him that his point system still worked, but only if he did something evil. They needed points. She suggested he do something mischievous, even if it meant taking Grim's clothes while she slept. It was a ridiculous idea, but desperate times called for absurd measures. Six refused at first, groaning about the ethics of the suggestion. But the hunger and thirst gnawed at all of them. They needed points, and fast. As the days dragged on, their condition worsened. By the fourth day, they had abandoned all attempts at travel during daylight. The heat scalded their skin, and even touching the sand left burns. Their bodies were weakening. With no food and barely any shade, they rationed what little magic they had left just to keep themselves from collapsing. They trudged along at night, conserving energy, but even then, progress was painfully slow. By the seventh day, all of them were at their limit. Their clothes hung loosely on their bodies. Skin was cracked and lips were parched. They hadn't eaten in days, and water was a distant memory. As the last vestiges of energy drained from them, Six finally collapsed next to Snow. She, too, was barely hanging on. He whispered that he might have to do something wildly inappropriate just to gain enough points to save them. But before he could act on his thoughts, Snow fainted beside him, falling into the burning sand like a rag doll. Alice, surprisingly still semi-conscious, urged Six to go through with it. She insisted they needed those points. Six hesitated, muttering that it went against the rules of their guild. He refused to take advantage of anyone, even if it meant death. Then, unexpectedly, Rose emerged from the makeshift tent, looking as wild as the desert winds. Her mind seemed frayed by hunger and dehydration. She told Six she couldn't take it anymore and lunged toward him with unnatural intent. Six backed away, alarmed. He tried to explain that she was still just a child in the guild's eyes, and anything that happened now would be a violation of their mission code. But Rose was insistent, her eyes blank and driven by a hunger beyond food. She pinned him to the ground, her strength surprising even Six. As she lowered her face to his, Alice burst into the tent, wide-eyed at the scene unfolding. Six quickly tried to clarify, saying nothing had happened. Alice sighed and explained, to everyone's confusion, that they were thinking about two completely different things. While Six assumed Rose had romantic or inappropriate intentions, Alice clarified that Rose, being a literal carnivore under a cursed contract, had merely intended to eat him, literally consume his flesh. The moment this truth came out, Rose snarled and lunged at Six again, driven by her insatiable survival instinct. Six rolled away, shouting in disbelief. But as Rose chased him, Six's panic and struggle somehow started to generate evil points. Each act of self-defense, each moment of pure chaotic energy, energy restored his ability to collect points again. He dodged her again and again, until finally he had amassed enough to summon a transport jeep and some emergency supplies. At dawn, exhausted and bruised but victorious, the team climbed into their summoned vehicle and began the long drive back to Grace. None of them spoke. They were too drained mentally and physically, and the weight of the mission's failure still hung in the air like a storm cloud. When they arrived at the Royal Hall, Tilly's was already waiting. Her eyes locked onto them, scanning their battered appearances before settling on the empty hands of the group. Her face didn't move, but the disappointment was palpable. She listened as 6 reported their failure. The jeep lost, the water stones destroyed, the Sand King's territory unbreached. Tilly's didn't raise her voice. Instead, she told them with a calm severity that the situation was now far worse than before. Without the water stones, the Kingdom of Grace could not sustain itself through the coming months. War was no longer a looming threat, it was a certainty. The Sand King had aligned himself with Turi's, and together they would strike Grace when it was most vulnerable. Their armies were vast, and with Grace's water supply critically limited, they stood no chance of withstanding a siege. Tilly's fixed her gaze on 6. As the leader of the failed mission, responsibility now fell squarely on his shoulders. She told him that it was up to him to make it right. If they were to survive, they needed to counterstrike something powerful, something unexpected. She informed him that Hine and Russell, the same enemies from their past, were now rumored to be guarding a forbidden weapon, hidden deep within enemy territory. A weapon that, if acquired, could change the course of the war. A weapon that could balance the scales. Alice, leaning against the wall and still chewing a dry energy root, suggested a simple but dangerous idea. Instead of confronting Hine and Russell directly, why not steal the weapon in the dead of night? Avoid the fight entirely, infiltrate, extract, and return safely. 6 rubbed his temples, thinking. It wasn't ideal. He wasn't honorable. But none of that mattered anymore. With their backs against the wall and a war on the horizon, rules and morals could no longer guide them. What mattered now was survival of their people, their kingdom, and their place in a world that was falling apart. As night fell again over Grace, 6 and his companions prepared for what might be their most reckless mission yet. No jeeps, no second chances, just one opportunity to steal a weapon that could save their world or doom it completely. As dawn began to break, 6 and his team were already preparing for the mission that would take them to the ruins near the kingdom of Torrid. The air around them was filled with tension as everyone moved quietly, each one focused on the task ahead. Alice was talking to the Tiger Man about their route and necessary supplies when suddenly, a notification popped up on the kingdom's official guild computer. A new live broadcast was about to begin, one that invited every member of the Kingdom of Grace to tune in immediately. The subject line flashed urgently, demanding attention. Curious, Alice clicked on the link without hesitation. 6, standing nearby, sighed as he noticed. He already suspected Alice was up to something unnecessary again, getting distracted when they were supposed to be focusing on their next operation. But then the screen lit up, and a video of Belil wearing a strikingly provocative swimsuit filled the monitor. 6, stunned, quickly grabbed a chair and dropped into it, eyes glued to the screen despite himself. A full-blown party was taking place by the kingdom's pool. Music thumped in the background as the camera panned around, showing guests mingling, drinks flowing, and luxurious food being served. There were polls running across the screen, organized by Lilith, allowing the public to vote for their favorite among the top kingdom figures. The audience was being asked who they believed the final boss of the kingdom should be: Belil, Astaroth, or Lilith. As 6 watched the event unfold, he muttered to himself how unfair life was. Tomorrow, he was heading into dangerous ruins, facing possible death in battle with demons, while these 3 were poolside, lounging in bikinis and soaking in the spotlight. He leaned back and declared he would watch the entire stream before doing anything else. Meanwhile, Astaroth and Belil, unaware that everything they were saying and doing was being broadcasted live, began chatting casually. They were laughing about the party guests and how clueless most of them were. Lilith, sly as ever, approached them with wine glasses in hand. Unknown to them, Lilith had cleverly hidden a small camera on her outfit, which was streaming everything to the viewers. Her dress shimmered as she walked, and her camera smoothly followed the 2 high-ranking members without alerting them. She began discussing 6, bringing up how the mutant spider woman and the mantis woman had taken a liking to him during earlier missions. Both had once cornered him to ask who he truly worked for. Belil scoffed, joking that only strange women liked 6, and commented on how indecisive he always was. But Lilith grinned and said that, since he couldn't pick just one of them, he had taken a public poll. In the end, the votes were split evenly, another tie. So both women were now assigned to work as a pair, forming an unexpected and bizarre team in the field. As Lilith continued narrating the story, her camera shifted more and more to suggestive angles, catching details of Astaroth and Belil's bodies in their swimsuits. The viewers in the chat began flooding the comment section with requests for more. The popularity of the stream skyrocketed. Alice, observing the stream from across the room, groaned and muttered that she already knew what Lilith was up to. The entire livestream was a marketing ploy to gain more views, subscriptions, and donations. And sure enough, the comments exploded with people offering money, hoping to see more of Belial and Astaroth's beachwear. Then, the stream abruptly ended, cutting to black. A new prompt appeared on the screen, a bright button asking viewers if they wanted to see more. All they had to do was subscribe with a few dollars. Without hesitation, people started subscribing. Even Six couldn't help himself and signed up, justifying it as an investment in intel gathering. Back at the party, the girls began a new debate over who the real final boss was. Lilith bet on herself, raising her glass confidently. Belial mocked her, laughing that Lilith always placed last every year. She teased that it was because Lilith neither had money nor enough followers to win. Lilith snapped back, reminding them both that she was the greatest scientist of the kingdom, a title far more useful than their fan service. Astaroth joined in, accusing Lilith of bribing voters and agents behind the scenes. Lilith shrugged and claimed she didn't care about winning. She just enjoyed participating and entertaining the public. Belial, however, reminded them that the people relied on them for strength and leadership. Lilith, sensing an opportunity, handed them both another glass of wine. She softly suggested that they probably wanted to know who Six voted for. At the mention of his name, Astaroth's demeanor shifted. Her usual stoicism gave way to a faint blush. The alcohol made her more honest. She admitted that Six had always been kind to her. From the moment of his first interview, she had felt something different. He treated her like an equal, respected her work, and never backed down. Even when facing life-threatening danger, she confessed that although she cared for him, she could never bring herself to say it aloud. Their kingdom was on the verge of conquest. She had no time for personal emotions. But as she poured her feelings out, Lilith's hidden camera captured everything. Moments later, realizing what she had done, Astaroth's eyes widened in horror. Everything she said was being broadcasted. She screamed in frustration and hit Lilith with a powerful blast of magic. The impact sent Lilith flying across the pool deck. Evil points surged for both of them, but so did embarrassment. Astaroth began to stutter, apologizing under her breath, cheeks still burning. Belial approached Lilith, demanding to know what her plan was all along. As the crowd continued to buzz with excitement, Lilith reconnected to Six via video. He, now watching the whole scene unfold, appeared on screen and casually announced that he had voted for Lilith. The moment the words left his mouth, silence fell. Astaroth froze, heart sinking. Her eyes dimmed as disappointment washed over her. She mumbled that she didn't want to win if it meant such embarrassment. She turned away, crushed. Lilith quickly muted the call before Six could say more, insisting that he was just causing confusion and damaging their friendships. But privately, Astaroth and Six began chatting. He admitted that he always promoted the annual poll with free gifts, offering discounts, and promising meals in exchange for votes. That was how he got so many people to support her each year. She smiled, quietly relieved. When they checked the latest results, Astaroth had briefly risen to first place, but soon dropped back to second, with Lilith once again at the top. Belial, confused, asked what trick Lilith had pulled this time. Lilith admitted that she didn't cheat. Instead, she hired ordinary people with no influence to vote for her and gave them sample content. The simplicity worked. When Belial and Astaroth heard this, they grew furious. They tied Lilith up, wrapped her in towels until she looked like a snowman, and cancelled all her pending payments. Then, they filed a formal complaint with Nikitube and requested the livestream be taken down entirely. Moments later, Lilith, still tied up, asked Six through a device who he truly voted for. But before he could answer, an alert came and an army of demons was attacking their territory, crashing the party. Lilith started shouting battle orders even as she remained wrapped like a towel doll. Six was about to respond when Astaroth calmly said he could tell her later. He laughed awkwardly, warning her not to say things like that. It was often the last thing people said before dying. But Astaroth just smiled, finally regaining her confidence. She looked at the screen and said it was time to show the world which force was the strongest. The Kisaragi force would rise, and tomorrow, as they faced the demons in the ruins of Torrid, the world would know the might of grace. With the stream now over, the team turned their attention back to the mission, their bonds shaken but strangely stronger. The ruins awaited. And this time, it wasn't about polls or popularity or live streams. It was about survival. The next morning arrived with blazing sunlight and a heavy sense of responsibility hanging over the group. Everyone was up early, assembling outside the base with weapons ready and minds steeled for what lay ahead. They were preparing to infiltrate the torrid ruins and retrieve the secret weapon, a mission that could shift the tide of the war. Alice, ever the organizer, handed out their roles and responsibilities. Everyone was expected to kill, sabotage, or steal whatever it took to complete the operation successfully. The team piled into the dusty jeep, setting out on yet another reckless journey across barren wastelands and cracked terrain. As the vehicle bounced along the broken road, Rose turned towards Six and asked him about what he did to the prince during their last visit. Her tone was half accusatory, half curious. Six glanced at her, then asked her why she had tried to eat him back in the desert, reminding her of the time when survival instincts nearly made her a predator. In the back seat, Snow was weeping dramatically, moaning that her pay had been cut again and she would soon be broke. Alice, without looking back, casually told her that if she performed well in the upcoming mission, she'd consider rewarding her with extra cash. As soon as Snow heard the word money, her tears stopped like magic. She began laughing to herself, whispering something incoherent. Six, puzzled, asked what she meant by that. Alice smirked and explained that Snow was the type of person who was greedy to her core. She could be manipulated as long as the right bait was money. In that way, she was easy to control, and in missions like this, that kind of greed could be useful. Later that night, they finally reached the perimeter of the ancient torrid ruins. Massive broken pillars stood like forgotten soldiers in a wasteland of history. The moonlight cast shadows that danced across the jagged remains of an old empire. The air was dry, and the scent of metal and decay wafted through the cracks in the earth. Grim, who had been napping since the last gas station, suddenly woke up and declared with pride that it had been the best nap of her life. Six quickly shushed her, reminding her that they were currently in hiding and that noise could get them caught. Alice scanned the surrounding ruins and spotted a chamber that seemed to be lightly guarded. She suspected it held something valuable, maybe even the weapon itself. Grim, eyes sparkling with excitement, said this was their chance and began preparing herself for battle. But Six stopped her, pointing out that her cult-based powers often created more trouble than results, and this was no time for unintended summoning circles or screaming chants that summoned things they couldn't control. Snow, overhearing this, clapped her hands together and started praying loudly for a successful assault that very night. She said that they should strike at dawn when the guards would be the most exhausted. But before any real plan could be made, Hein and Russell appeared just outside the ruins, speaking loudly to each other about their schedule. Apparently, they were planning to spend the next day fighting some mechanical monsters deeper in the ruins, training against increasingly powerful opponents to prepare for the upcoming demon invasion. Six exchanged a glance with Alice. Their timing couldn't have been better. However, the rest of the team descended into chaos as Snow and Grim began arguing over whose idea it was to attack during the night. Grim insisted it was hers, while Snow said she had read it in a book. The two went back and forth until Six finally told them both to shut up. He declared that there was no way an actual Kisaragi agent would make such a foolish plan. To calm the situation, Alice revealed their actual strategy. They would let Hein and Russell waste their mana and strength by fighting the robotic monsters all day. Once they were weakened, that would be the team's chance to move in and steal the weapon with minimal resistance. Everyone went silent. It was so simple yet effective, exactly the kind of strategic brilliance Kisaragi agents were known for. Snow and Grim blinked in unison, realizing just how inferior their ideas had been. The following morning, as the sun rose and the guards around the ruins fell into their morning slumber, the team quietly crept into the building. Rose seemed distant, glancing at the ancient architecture with a strange expression. Alice noticed and asked her what was wrong. Rose admitted that the place looked familiar somehow, like fragments of a dream she couldn't quite piece together. Inside the ruins, broken limbs of ancient robotic guardians littered the halls. Large circuits were fused with fossilized bones, and eerie blue lights blinked weakly along the walls. As they went deeper, Rose whispered that she remembered playing with machines like these once, though she couldn't recall when or why. Before they could ponder her strange memory further, a booming sound echoed from another chamber. Hein and Russell had started their battle. The ground trembled as energy bursts lit up the cavern, robotic monsters growling with mechanical fury. Alice and Six smiled. Everything was going according to plan. Their enemies were distracted and depleting their strength. Now was their moment. Snow, on the other hand, started picking up mechanical debris and ancient parts from the floor. She whispered gleefully that she could probably sell the stuff for a good price back at the base. Alice scolded her, saying she was sabotaging the mission with her greed yet again. Meanwhile, Hein and Russell continued pushing deeper into the ruins, unaware of the trap awaiting them. At one point, Russell fell into a pit, but Hein managed to save him at the last second using a well-timed teleport spell. However, the spell drained her and her body glowed with fatigue. Still, she pressed on, determined not to fall behind. Farther in, Alice whispered to Six that they should cut off Hein and Russell's power supply by using Grimm's and Snow's abilities to manipulate mana flows and disrupt the ghost-like defense systems. Grimm grumbled that she couldn't scream during her incantations, as that was her main power source. Still, she agreed to try. Suddenly, Russell activated a hidden console, and a massive chamber door opened. Inside stood a colossal robot, the secret weapon. It was dormant but imposing, glowing faintly with crimson veins running across its armor. Six saw the opportunity and charged, landing a powerful hit on the back of Russell's head, knocking him out cold. Snow gasped, accusing him of knocking out a child. But Alice quickly used one of her custom injections to stabilize Russell, preventing permanent harm. She stated that while he might have been down for now, they couldn't afford to let him regain control. Six announced that they should subdue them both and follow instructions. However, things took a turn. As soon as Russell regained consciousness, he sprang into action, jumping into the pilot seat of the colossal robot. Six realized too late that they had played right into Russell's hands. Laughing maniacally, Russell began to crush the ruins with every step. He shouted that he would destroy both humans and demons alike, blaming them all for his suffering. Hein tried to stop him, but he lashed out with the robot's energy cannon. She narrowly avoided it by teleporting. But to her horror, she realized her clothes had vanished, teleported off her body, now held mockingly by Six, who had grabbed them during the scuffle to confuse Russell. When Six tossed them at Russell, the robot pilot screamed in rage, completely losing his mind. The situation quickly spiraled out of control. Russell now stood towering above them, eyes glowing with fury inside the machine, his hatred boiling over as he prepared to annihilate everyone in the chamber. The mission had gone from quiet infiltration to full-blown chaos, and it was only just beginning. As the mechanical monstrosity piloted by Russell began destroying the ancient ruins, panic spread among the group like wildfire. Crumbling walls and falling debris sent everyone scrambling for cover. Dust clouded their vision, and the screeching of twisting metal echoed through the underground labyrinth. Alice ducked behind a broken pillar, turning towards Six with urgency in her eyes, demanding to know what they should do now. The team, instead of working together, fell into disarray, arguing and panicking rather than focusing on the crisis at hand. Grimm, in typical fashion, activated her chaotic and mostly useless cult powers, which drained her energy before the real fight had even begun. She collapsed with a loud sigh, already out of commission. Seeing this, Rose stepped forward and asked Six if she could confront Russell instead, since they both shared a similar monstrous origin. Her eyes shimmered with determination, but Six felt a pang of guilt. Was he really going to let a kid handle this mess? He hesitated but then shook his head, declaring that he would take on the task himself. The two of them began arguing, each insisting on being the one to face Russell. Neither could bear to admit their own limits. Alice, frustrated by the lack of coordination, devised a new plan. She would be the brains and Six the muscle. She ordered him to buy her some time while she ran to the deepest part of the ruins to construct a powerful counterweapon, a massive machine she dubbed the Destroyer. As the girls followed Alice deeper into the ruins, Six took a deep breath and turned toward the chaos outside. Alone, he engaged Russell, dodging attacks and striking weak points on the massive machine. His movements were precise, his strikes aimed at disabling the robot rather than defeating it outright. It was a stalling tactic, and Russell knew it. He sneered and declared that Six's efforts were pointless. As the machine's pilot, his life force was synced with the robot's engine. As long as he was alive, the machine would fight. Realizing his opponent's strategy, Russell intensified his attacks. He began swinging wildly, chasing Six through the debris-strewn battlefield. Six, pushing his limits, continued to evade and counter, all while waiting for Alice to finish building the Destroyer. Eventually, his stamina gave out. Russell's robot caught him in a massive mechanical hand. Six screamed in pain as the machine's grip tightened. Blood spilled from his mouth as his body was crushed. Russell laughed, declaring he had long since stopped being human. Just as it seemed all hope was lost, a thunderous sound erupted from deep within the ruins. The Destroyer emerged, massive and glowing with newly forged power. Its fists gleamed under the moonlight. Russell froze in place, stunned by the sight. He asked how they had managed to construct something so powerful in such a short time. Without warning, the Destroyer charged forward, landing a devastating punch against Russell's robot, triggering a massive explosion that lit up the desert sky. Time passed. Six woke up in a dimly lit room, his body aching. Alice sat beside him with a smug expression. She told him their mission had been a success. She had piloted the Destroyer herself and knocked Russell's machine out of commission. To help his recovery, she had injected him with advanced nanomachines that would accelerate his healing. Six, still groggy, asked about the others. Alice explained that the Tiger Man had handled the remaining threats, while she drove off the Torrid army using the Destroyer. With the enemy defeated and no war looming, peace had finally returned to their world. 6 smiled weakly, finally able to relax. When he asked about Russell, Alice said that Grim and Rose had taken care of him after the battle. Before leaving the room, Alice started unbuttoning 6's shirt. He blinked, blushing furiously, and tried to cover himself. She rolled her eyes and said she was just checking his vitals. He had been unconscious for 3 days, after all. Still embarrassed, 6 muttered that they would settle this later, maybe when Snow and Grim were around to keep her in check. Alice teased that no ordinary human would fall for someone like him anyway. Perhaps he needed an android partner to take care of him forever. She even joked that she should request a body upgrade to match Grim or Snow. Eventually, 6 asked Alice to accompany him to the prison cells where Russell was being held. Deep within the jail, Russell sat chained to a reinforced wall, his eyes dull but his mouth still twisted in a defiant smirk. When he saw 6, he laughed, surprised that his old opponent was still alive. 6 offered him a deal, a chance at redemption and purpose. But Russell, with his pride still intact, immediately refused, stating that he would never join them. 6 shrugged dramatically, then turned to the shadows. A massive figure stepped forward, the Tiger Man. His presence sent chills down Russell's spine. The Tiger Man bent the bars of the cell as though they were made of paper, whispering that he was gentle with those he liked. Holding Russell's chin, he smiled ominously. Terrified, Russell screamed that he would join the Kisaragi forces. He would even manufacture water for them if they just kept the Tiger Man away. 6 smirked, telling him he should have agreed sooner. Back at the Grace Kingdom, Snow, Grim, and Rose were enjoying a rare moment of calm. They were lounging around, gossiping and snacking, when 6 walked in and joked that Grim should try wearing socks for once. Grim refused, claiming she never wore anything on her feet. Alice, ever the prankster, ordered socks online and forced Grim to wear them. The moment she did, something strange happened. A spark of magical backlash caused her to explode in a puff of smoke. Everyone burst into laughter, even 6. Alice clapped her hands in delight, saying it was just as she predicted. The group continued joking around for hours, basking in the joy of peace. Meanwhile, from the palace, Tilly's looked down on them and sighed. While she worked tirelessly to maintain order and balance, they were out here goofing off. Far away, in the lonely expanse of the desert, Hein stood at the top of a crumbling tower. She stared at the horizon, vowing to avenge both Gattlecand and Russell. In the depths of Grace's dungeon, Russell continued screaming for help as the Tiger Man loomed over him. The screams echoed into the night, unanswered. Back in the heart of Grace, Alice and 6 sat under the stars. The moon was full, and the air felt clean for once. 6 turned to her and said that if he couldn't return to his original world, maybe this place could be his new home. Maybe he would take over this planet instead. Alice looked at him and saw something new in his eyes. And for the first time in a long time, she smiled. That concludes the anime recap. As always, if you enjoyed, let me know down below, and I'm out.